You know him very well. You know him as maybe the pastor of pain. Maybe you knew him for as a New York Giant, or you're an old guy like me as a South Carolina Gamecock. There he is, looking outside on the sun. This is the porch there, or sunroom. What do we call it there, Corey Miller? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, screening porch, man. What a beautiful morning. And of course, I got hummingbirds over to my left. I'm sitting here with my grandbaby. Say hey to Ava.
Oh,
And
hey Ava, thanks for
Ava's,
joining us.
Ava's hanging out with us a little bit while my wife is doing a couple of things in the yard. So she got babysitting duties today. But yeah, man, life is great, brother. Good to see you, Tim.
Oh, good to see you too, man. Wait, you just pulled the hey, I have to. I'm going to do this show, and you get to go work in the yard to the wife move. That's amazing.
Well, she's working in the yard. I'm just sitting there watching. We had some a new little patio poured out back next to my little man cave, and we're gonna put my little smoker out there. I'm a big smoker these days, and keeps me busy. The brisket and the butts and all that good stuff. So we had the patio out here and the man cave inside. So got a lot of stuff going on, getting ready for summer.
Good stuff. Well done, man. Yeah, it is almost here for sure. My kids are wrapping up school, the whole thing, wrapping up baseball season and flag football season and all that, man. You had some really good news here recently, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get you on, becoming a USC Hall of Famer, man. Can you kind of sum up? I know you did a social media post about it and expressed what it meant to you, but now that you're maybe even a little bit further removed from the news, how does that sound? How does it feel?
It sounds wonderful. It's one of those things that you feel like I've done enough on the field and your numbers, and you sit back. Of course, been in the media like you for a lot of years and covering the Hall of Fame, and you see people going in, and you kind of sometimes it bothers you. I'll be lying if I said it didn't. Sometimes that you keep getting passed over, but it's I believe in God's timing. I believe that it works all together for good. And when Ray Tanner called me last week, or while I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and then it was just amazing. It brought me to tears. I felt kind of weird there in the restaurant crying, but it was kind of that surreal moment. Like I'm finally here. Something I wanted so bad, Tim. Growing up in Pageland, growing up in the state of South Carolina, being a Gamecock fan all my life. My head coach Al Usher played here. Has been bringing me to South Carolina camp since the early '80s. I've been coming here the Joe Morrison days, and I never forget when I went to camp here my freshman year, and he said, called me down in the end zone, and it was all black, shades on with a cigarette, and he said, "Hey," he said, "Son, I just want to let you know you got a scholarship here in the ninth grade, and you can wear your number 33." And I'll never forget that day. And so, going through the years, is playing here, 2001, the great fans and great teammates. I mean, it's just been special. So to get that now elite class of athletes here at the university is just, I'm humbled, I'm blessed, I'm thankful, that my name was finally called.
Good stuff from Corey Miller, going back kind of from your beginning. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about the Joe Morrison offer back in the day, man. And that's when I started to come to South Carolina football as well. I know a lot of Gamecock fans did back in the day. Let's just go. I want to go more back through your personal journey as well. But since you brought that up, and I try to go from the present back to the past. Try to take every day and make sure that we stress the importance of every day, right? So
Yes.
why don't we, as we're sitting here right now, how do you compare the Carolina program with Shane Beamer going into year number 2 to some of these other regimes that we've lived through, that we've seen the program kind of ebb and flow through the years?
Today the program is where I envision it being, to be honest with you. When Shane Beamer got this job, I mean, there was obviously speculation. I got to be honest, and Shane knows this. I was on the Chris Rump train in the beginning because former teammate, obviously, he played here. I didn't know a whole lot about Shane at the time. I knew that he coached here before with Spurrier, and knew of his father, the Beamer Ball, Virginia Tech. So I knew all of that, but didn't know him too much personally. But when he got this job, Tim, I got to say he's won me over 1,000%. I was just down at Clyde Wren's event last night. Shane is the kind of dude that he's genuine. He really wants his job. He loves being a South Carolina Gamecock. His energy is contagious. I see him on the practice field, how he works with the kids. The love is real. It's not some loose word thrown up there like some places about love. It's genuine, and he's getting the fan base back in it. He's recruiting. He's getting good football players. I think he has a really solid staff, and I think it's where South Carolina football needs to be. There's no reason there's no reason we shouldn't win. There's no reason that we can't compete in the SEC East or for the SEC championship. All the facilities, all the nutrition, all the training staff, the weight staff. I mean, everything. I've been around these programs. My son was at Alabama. I've seen the best of the best. I've seen how they work. I've seen what goes into building a championship program. I've seen it for 5 years up close and personal. South Carolina has all the tools that it needs. So, looking at what they have now, this is what I envision versus when, the Spurrier showed us a little bit of how successful it could be, right? Spurrier had that good 5-year run. I think he won 44 games, 3 11-win seasons, 3 top 10 finishes, I believe. But they couldn't cap it off. You ran into Auburn and Cam Newton when they played for the championship. But he had a chance. And then I think we saw a glimpse of what it could really be. I was down there at the stadium the night they beat Florida to claim the SEC East, 1, 2 in the morning. I was there with the fans, because I was feeling so good about this program. So we've seen synopsis of what this thing could really be, versus back to the 80s when I was here, late 80s, with Joe Morrison, which we were 87 and 88 top 10 program. Then he passed away, and Sparky Woods came in, and it was a downhill spiral, and it was all over the place. We kept fishing for coaches from Brad Scott, the Lou Holtz, so it kind of was all over the place. So, listen, man, this program, I think now is back headed in the right direction of success. It's different, obviously, than what I'm really accustomed to. I'm old school, but I know what goes into the new regime of social media and everything you got to do there, and the transfer portal and NIL. Things are so different. But I think the NIL and the portal, things like that, helps a team like South Carolina bridge the gap, because you don't have to depend on a high school kid developing and come in and play. You can go get a Spencer Rattler. You can go get a running back from Wake Forest. You can go get guys from other places to help bridge the gap to catch up with other teams. And I think that's why this program is destined to get back competing for SEC East championship.
I think that's really interesting that you say that. I'm with you on bridging the gap. I don't understand the gas baggy hot takes that the rich are going to get richer and college football is going to get more top heavy. I don't know how you can get more top heavy from what we've had with the college football playoff and the Alabama domination, the Georgias, the Oklahomas. We know the familiar names in college football, and I think Spencer Rattler is a great example, like you mentioned. As you were speaking, Corey, it dawned on me, and I've been talking about this recently. I know a lot of people have. How important is it from your perspective that South Carolina football has a unique identity out there in the college football world?
It's very important. They have to separate themselves in a way, because I was talking with somebody last night at the event. SEC football is hard. And, in your division, you got Tennessee and Florida still there, although they have been great the last couple of years. But these are staple programs. These are programs that has a lot of history. Kentucky has bypassed South Carolina. Because you got, Georgia with Kirby Smart now is doing their thing. So what can you do to separate or be different? And I think what Beamer is selling is the facilities. If you go around the SEC East, Tennessee, Florida, Vanderbilt, Missouri, even Georgia, South Carolina has great facilities. South Carolina has one of the greatest fan bases in all of America. South Carolina has, the welcome home thing now. He's building a program that has something I think is contagious to these young kids. And Shane himself, when you have a head coach who's so personable, he's not the Dabo personable. Dabo's a little bit way up there over the top. Shane is just genuine. I can just give you an example. Last night, I went to Clyde Wren's deal. Matter of fact, that earlier today, he said, "Hey, Corey, I apologize. I went to Beamer Ball the other night. Joe Rice and Lisa Rice invited me and my wife. We had a great time of something unique and different, dancing on the field and food and a cocktail. That was an amazing time. But he didn't get a chance to, he saw me from a distance and waved. I get a text message said, "Hey, I'm so sorry, man. I didn't get a chance to come and visit with you. My bad." And I'm like, "Dude, it's cool. I know you dealing with boosters and things like that." Um, and then last night, I asked a question. They had the panel with Spencer Rattler and Zach Pickens on stage with Coach Beamer, and I asked a question about the portal and the NIL stuff and all that versus recruiting high school kids. And uh, so he didn't mention me about the Hall of Fame, which I didn't care about that. I was asking a question. I get a call right as I'm driving back home. It's Shane Beamer. So, man, I'm a knucklehead. I dropped the ball. I wanted to make sure I acknowledge you. He didn't have to do that. No, Steve Spurrier wouldn't have done that. Will Muschamp wouldn't have done that. This man genuinely cares, and so I think he's really building a program here that when you talk to parents, and I know this because with my ministry, Giants4Christ, I'm mentoring kids. I got a kid like Heaven Brown Schuler in Atlanta and Tatum Mines here in Lexington starting court. Kids that I know how these coaches, Shane Beamer, interact with these players. It's contagious, and that's why they're in the top fours now. When you look at some of these big recruits, Tim, you see it, they're in their final list. Not because so much the winning tradition at South Carolina, because they are building something special here. And I do believe that they're going to start winning championships. I really believe that.
Corey Miller, good stuff there for sure. You mentioned what you're doing right now. You got the hat on, the Giants4Christ. Can you tell us more about your mentorship program that you're doing with some youth football players?
Yes, man. Tim. Playing in the NFL was my dream, obviously, and living that life of some will call it the rich and the famous, and you know, been known by people and taking the pictures and the autograph, and you see it today with a lot of players. They get caught up in that lifestyle. I did. I got caught up in it. Wanting a nice house, driving a Mercedes Benz, the Louis Vuitton luggage, the Gucci, all that stuff. And now they're even more with the Instagram stuff. Um, you know, so it took me down a bad path. It took me down a road when it was over. The, the hardest transition I've ever had is transitioning from football to normal life. I'm in the early 30s, and I got really depressed. A lot of people don't know my testimony and story, but I became depressed. I went on the road with Hootie and the Blowfish for about 8 months. I was going through a divorce. I was losing my clothing store down on Gervais Street. Financially it was a huge decline. I lost so much money. In 2003, I contemplated suicide. I sat there with a 40 Glock gun in my hand, down in Charleston at my house at the time, and all I could hear these voices was telling me to take my life. And I can tell you, it was the voice of my grandmother when I was a little boy, about 7, 8 years old, who said to me and my mom, she said, Ethel, God's going to use that little boy. God's got a plan for that little boy. And so 28, 30 years later, I heard her voice at that moment. And so that's how, I moved the next day, came back to Columbia. And it's like I had this really change in my heart, mind that with God, I know it was God. And that I need to make sure I preach the gospel for one. And now with men and athletes, share the truth with them. My perceived truth, that what I believe is good and true and right. And that's the gospel. And I want to take these athletes and mentor them and give them great guidance. Some of them don't have a father like I did in the home, and I still got off the path with a great, great father. What about these young men who don't have fathers? So I'm trying to speak life into them, give them directions, like my own son who's going through it right now as well. So, um, you know, love on them, give them the encouragement. Yeah, you can make it, but don't let it take you down this road, because life is not all about that. And you're going to find that out. A lot of these guys have to find out the hard way, like I did, and almost cost me my life. So I believe in building a real giant. People think Corey Miller, New York Giants, but to me, I don't know. I don't like even talking about that. The real giant to me is, how can I be a godly husband? How can I be a godly father? How can I be a godly friend, a good person in the community to serve people and be a giant that way? So that's the part of this whole ministry, building giant young men that's going to raise up to be great football players, yes, or athletes, but great husbands and men and fathers.
That's powerful stuff, man. I appreciate you sharing your story with us. Obviously, what you're doing with young people right now is massively important. Corey, how do we get it wrong right now from the outside looking in? You mentioned you've been doing media stuff, TV, radio, a lot. I guess maybe the better question to ask is how can we do it better? Maybe to set athletes up specifically for more success, or maybe to keep that image illusion from kind of overtaking identity that happens so often. It's so easy. I mean, I think anybody who's ever played sports can identify to some extent, I think,
Yeah,
to your story. No, very few of us play for the New York Giants besides Lawrence Taylor and had the success that you had in going in the USC Hall of Fame. But I think all of us can identify to a certain extent that, man, if you start winning games and you feel good about yourself, and that's how you identify a little bit, and then if that gets taken away, then it can be a big time tough transition, I think, to kind of what you were speaking to.
yeah, Tim, it's so hard, man. I go back to my son, right? Just watching his recruitment and the letters and there was days you go to mailbox like Florida State one day sent him almost 20 letters. I mean, from one school. I mean, coaches calling, tweeting, texting. I mean, telling these kids how wonderful and how great they are. Think about it, they're 16, 17, 18 years old, and now you get the fans have access, and they're making these young men feel they're like they're larger than life. We putting signs up in 5 Points, and come Oscar Depp or come whomever. That's already on college campuses, and so it's hard to get these kids to not think that they're great, not to think that they're invincible, because we do it in the media. We call them and recruiting calls, and now you're a 4-star, you're a 5-star, you're the best in the world. Listen, their head is blown. It's hard, and so you kind of have to, de-recruit, if you will. You got to kind of somewhat normalize, and that's what I try to do with Christian. And I thank God he didn't really get caught up in all of that. I mean, now we want to be on TV to choose a school. We want to take somebody's hat and throw it in the trash can, pick up. I mean, and God, now you got the NIL. Now you got people saying, hey, we'll give you $8 million or we'll give you $100,000. I mean, think about the pressure. Think about these young men who don't have a clue. So it's hard for us, even in the media, to not talk about it, not to have conversations about it, because the fan bases and people want to talk about how great these kids are and why they should come here over there. It's hard. I mean, but they got to have some stability in their lives. They got to have some people to say, listen, it's great. Like I told Heaven Brown Shooter, he's a single parent mom, getting recruited by everybody. He's a 5-star. And I keep telling him, practice, work like you're a 0-star. I keep telling the mother, this stuff is going to end at some point. Don't get so wrapped up. Everybody loves you. Everybody wants you. Everybody giving you first-class treatment. Everybody's talking about you. But at some point, it's going to end. Then what? What happens when the cheering stops? What happens if you go out and blow your knee out and nobody's talking about you anymore? And if you built your life on that, you'll end up where I was at, because you'll start chasing the noise, you'll start chasing the cheers, and that leads to bad decisions, like I did, to basically becoming a borderline alcoholic and making bad relational decisions, which made me an adulterer. It took a turn for a whole different path. And so we got to some way try to be sensible when we're talking about these kids, because you got to, and they're kids. It's like these, I watch some of the responses on social media. I'm like, these are 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They're not grown men. They don't know what they're doing. So we have to somehow build a fence around them, help protect them, but at the same time encourage them, if that makes any sense. But it's so hard, man. I mean, it's hard. I can't even imagine when I was recruited. It was like somebody got to get to a payphone and put a cord in. It's like come to your neighborhood, and when I grew up in Paisley, Tim, and it's like my community was all family, all black folk, and then So if a white dude showed up in the hood, if you will, he either was a police or he was an insurance man, And then in my case, it was like, oh, that's a coach from somebody because they had a little sign on the chest. Oh, that's Coach Aldridge from Clemson. Oh, that's so and so Joe Morrison and Jim Washburn from South Carolina. Oh, that's somebody. But it's like that's how they did it. And they go to Grandma Hayes, sit on the porch for Grandma while she's picking or peeling those peas and build a conversation, trying to talk to little Johnny or little Corey. What all this foolishness now. But man, we just got to get back. Some kind of way to normalcy, and try to really help these kids, protect them. But right now, it's with NIL, man. It's I don't know what they're going to do. I'm really concerned about the sport, to be honest with you.
Where is your biggest concern with what's coming kind of at these kids? Because I've always been kind of on that Steve Spurrier mindset, man. Look, these guys deserve a piece of the pie. They're generating so much money, man, and kind of to your point of that lifestyle that it does end, but for most of them, it ends in college. And to not ever be able to cash in on that in a financial sense outside of the scholarship opportunities and the educational opportunities, I've always thought has been unfair, and it's more fair now. But you're right, there are plenty of issues out there. What's kind of at the top of your list of concerns?
Well, Nick Saban said something. It was kind of laughable the other day. I think he was talking to Paul Feinbaum. It's like, he was concerned about the parity of college football. I was like, there's no parity right now. I mean, it's like it's Alabama every year. Clemson had that little nice 3 or 4 year run, and we got the same 5 or 6 teams that's been in the college football playoffs. Cincinnati finally got in there. I think that's not too much parity in my opinion, but. I think with the money, basically it's turned to pay for play. And that's my concern. As a former athlete, former player, I love the fact that, they can make money off the name, image, likeness. I think the universities have made so much money over the years off these athletes. And they have kids that's struggling. They got kids, families that can't pay light bill. They don't have a car. They can't buy pizza. Take a girl on a date because it broke. I know I was that kid. I had to borrow a Jim Washburn coat that draped me when I was a sophomore because I didn't have suit to wear on the road trip. So I'm happy for the kid to have some type of benefit. They deserve it. But at the same time, my biggest concern is it's the Wild Wild West. It's the Wild Wild West. It's turning into pay for play. You got the guy that's in the mid-major that has success that says, you know what, I'm gonna parlay this thing and I'm getting this portal and I'm gonna see what kind of money's out there for me. So the little guy gets hurt because their best players basically gonna get poached by bigger schools. He's out, right? And then sometimes the guy on the bigger school and there's a couple of guys at the position and they're gonna go say, well, let me see if I can go from Alabama to Texas and see what I can get done. Who's gonna pay me the most money? So the problem is there's no more commitment to a program. How do you keep these guys locked in to stay? I mean, because if they find an opportunity out there where they can go make some money, a lot of them are gone. And how do you build your team? I mean, how do you keep the structure? So, I'm glad they're making money, but it's like, man, they should have been, and the NCAA should have had some type of parameters, or just made it fair. Hey, you know what? Let's take a percentage. Let's split it. Everybody gets the same amount of money. Let's give them, let's give them $25,000 or $30,000, and if they graduate, whatever, let it increase, make money, then you get whatever. They could have did something to make it more simple because it's just the big players getting paid. The little guy's not making no money. I think I read something that the overall average is like $750 in the NIL. Like, it's the bigger players. It's the Spencer Rattlers. It's the guys that, gonna get an NIL deal, gonna get a new car. It's those players that are just reaping. Now, some of them are giving back to the offensive linemen, and that's good. That's what's hurting. That's going to hurt the program. And if Alabama, can get that guy from Arkansas State that's a top player, guess what? He's going to go to Alabama, and there are going to be deals there because they have strong boosters. Texas, A&M, these people got all this oil money. I mean, Southern California. Think about it. These big guys are going to get all of them that they want. Yeah, there'll be some left over, but Nick Saban is right to a degree that the guy that's already at the top will continue to get stronger because one, they winning the tradition, championship, college football playoff, and they got a huge, alumni base and booster. So college football is messed up. We're gonna still watch it, but it's just going to be some ugly stuff. So I think they got to do something, Tim, or we're going to see a whole lot of crazy stuff happening in the next couple of years to come.
I'm with you on that, and the opportunity to get the better players is certainly there for richer programs. But from my perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the great teams every single year, and being able to have that consistency. I think we're just kind of conditioned, Corey, to without that transfer portal model back in your playing day, or certainly for most of us having covered college sports, that it's just kind of understood that if you pick a college, you're going to stay there. That's your college, and you're good. It's almost like you're married, right? And now you have the simple divorce, or you're dating around everybody. You got tons of guys all over the place during this COVID period that have played 3, 4, maybe 5 schools, and it's definitely different from following college sports. I think it's going to reset eventually, and they're going to get a hold of this thing. But you're right. To me, the blame falls on the NCAA, the adults in charge that knew this thing was coming, kept fighting it, and then ultimately just kind of threw their hands up and said, we can't do anything. And now here we are, right? But as I say that, there's still plenty of optimism for Gamecock football, right? Plenty other programs out there all over the country are excited about 2022. So it's not, the game is strong. Players are strong. Fans are strong. We're going to get through it. But yeah, it's going to be different for sure. And as you were talking there, I was wondering, I like to ask all former players this. Savell Newton was on last week, I think it was, and mentioned that, hey, if the transfer portal was an option when Steve Spurrier came in and told him he wasn't a quarterback, he probably wasn't going to stay at South Carolina. I'm wondering, did you ever have a point in your career where you kind of go back and you think, well, if that transfer portal thing would have been an option, I certainly would have tested it out?
It's crazy. Somebody asked me that question at the dinner last night because I asked Coach Beamer, I said, how do you balance between the portal, recruiting a portal, and high school athletes? Because we talked there, someone asked a question about what's the most need, going forward. He talked about the offensive line because they got a veteran, offensive line, so they got to build some depth there. But I wanted to follow up with that question by saying, how do you balance? And, do you trust getting a high school kid and, and developing him versus going just picking somebody from the portal? And he talked about that. Sometimes you just got to go grab a guy because you don't have the time to wait on the freshman. My point was to the guy that asked me the question, I would have, not because I love South Carolina. I mean, it was everything to me. But when Joe Morrison died, the spring of 88 or 89, I think it was one of those years, I can't remember. It should be 89, I believe. And the coaching staff was dismantled, and they was bringing in one Sparky Woods. So from Appalachian State. I almost transferred then because Jim Washburn, who recruited me, who I loved, I loved this dude. He was my dude. And he was like, you want to go to Purdue with me? And I'll take care of you, blah, blah, blah. Make sure, I'm from Paisley. I've barely been to Charlotte. It's like, with Purdue, what in the world is that? And I know mom and dad can't drive a little panel-sized station wagon up there. It's cold. No, I'm not going to Purdue. I'll just take my chance with Sparky Woods. But if it would have been today, there's no doubt in my mind that dealing with that situation, I would have entertained it. Now, I'm not saying I would have left, depending on who, if it was Sparky Woods, as I know now, I would have been up out of here, brother. I'm telling you 100. Sparky Woods, I get in trouble for being too honest, but I'm just being honest. Sparky Woods was not, one, he wasn't a good coach, and he wasn't a good person at the time, in my opinion, because you don't tell, your athletes, especially your black athletes who make up about 7% of your team, oh, you guys need to be happy that you're here because most of you would be working in McDonald's if it wasn't for football. You don't make them kind of statements. So yeah, based on what I know today and how he treated guys and that stayed consistent, as you know, the walkout with Tannehill and those boys, they wouldn't play for him. So that started when I was there. But anyway, um, yeah, I would have entertained it based on what it is today and the fact that there's money out there and I was an all conference player. Um, you know, being by my family was broke and needed money. Tim, I would have been all on that. Now I'm just being honest with you, brother. They would throw some cash and say, hey, will you come to Georgia? Will you go? And if I couldn't get it at South Carolina, I had to leave because my family, we needed money. And, I was up against a coaching staff I had zero clue about. They took me from being an outside linebacker and like, hey, we got this defense. Now you got to put your hand in the dirt. Well, I've never put my hand in the dirt. But I did it for the team, and it worked out. Praise God, it still worked out, and I got inducted into the Hall of Fame as basically a defensive end because that's what I played most of my career. But I came here as a linebacker. You know, I would have been up out of here, bro. I know it's a long answer, but I'm thinking about all this stuff. But Sparky Woods, man, was not one of my favorite. And I got grace now. Been a born again Christian preacher, man. I'm just saying that's what it was back then. I probably would have bolted for sure.
No, I appreciate the honesty, and that's why I asked the question to all former athletes. And it's impossible to put yourself back there, right? Because it was just, I mean, that might as well have been a mission to Mars when you were playing, right? A free transfer a year, you can absolutely go wherever you want to. I mean, just the concept was completely foreign then. And as you were talking, I was wondering if you think you would have ended up becoming the player you became had you had the opportunity to go ahead and cash in earlier on. Would you have evolved how you evolved and with your NFL career and the whole thing?
That's a good question. The great thing about that staff was I got two great coaches, Brad Lowy and Rich Bisaccia, my senior year. And Brad Long was very integral in my development as a defensive end because I played basically outside backer, similar, but back in the day, we played the game in a box, right? It wasn't like it is today. The game is played in space now. Create the matchups out in space. Guys got to be great. They're looking for edge rushers. Pat Long, fast guys, twitchy on the outside type of guy. Well, I was a bulky 260, 525-pound bench presser type guy. I was a mauler. But he had to teach me how to play the position, leverage, playing with hands, good footwork. Brad Lowen taught me a lot of that. And then came along, Rich Bisaccia was behind him as a GA to work with me my senior year. So I don't think so. If I'd have left, who knows what I would have played. There wasn't a lot of 3-4 defenses going on at the time. I was a 3-4 outside backer, a Sam backer, which I played the Giants for all those years, playing over the tight end. But they taught me a lot of good things. I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad we didn't have the portal because I still think playing at Williams-Brice Stadium is one of the greatest places to ever play. And I played all over this country, NFL stadium, college stadiums. And I go back to South Carolina and say, man, this is one of the greatest places to play college football, to play any football. And so I did get blessed. I didn't like the defense per se. My sack totals went way down. But my tackles and tackle for losses and pressures went way up. And that was because of Brad Lowen and Rich Bisaccia. So I got some good training, some good coaching from a man, Brad Lowen, who knew a lot about football.
Yeah, and still does for sure, and had his run with a lot of Gamecock coaches through the years. And it doesn't surprise me to hear you sing his praises. But as you were speaking, it does dawn on me, right? Maybe that's one of the things the adults in the room can stress in some of these programs at this point with the transfer portal is, man, all these challenges that we go through now that we've been through on the other side have ended up forming us, and a lot of times for the better. And if you had the option to just jet who knows how it would have turned out. It's an interesting dichotomy for sure that these kids have to go through. So I'm thinking the head coaches that can. You mentioned Shane Beamer has a reputation for just being authentic and real, that can present truth and both sides of the equation and not just always sell theirs. I'm thinking maybe they're going to come out, ultimately in several years from now as the ones with the more successful programs, as opposed to, they're out there, Corey, the shysters. They're in
Yeah.
they're in every business, but they're certainly in college athletics too, that are only going to try to sell you what's going to help them. And I think young people see through that better than anybody, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I think the message that I would, and I talk to kids about this a lot is, don't settle for temporary pleasure. Because what they're offering, the shysters, as you said, is temporary pleasure. And that can lead to a lifetime of consequences. So sometimes, the girlfriend, you got a nice prom date. And I know the girl over here got looking good in her red dress and pumps, and she works out, and legs look good, and you over here you looking, oh man, I got a solid, strong girlfriend who's supportive, who's encouraging, and she's been with me through the thick and thin when I was ugly, when I didn't have, she's always been there, but there's always something dangling over here, right, trying to win your attention, and that's kind of how I look at it, guys that do well stay with the one that's been there. Stay with the one who fought with them in the trenches, who, when nobody was asking for autographs, she was there. When nobody wanted to sign you, that one team was there. So you kind of got to look at it like that way, because I think staying put. I mean, sometimes you have situations like me. I had a coach that passed away, or coaches leave and a new coaching staff, and you have to look at it, right? But I get that. But just for the sake of moving and money, and I think Shane Beamer is going to win that case most of the time with players, because they really like Shane Beamer. They like his staff. They know that he cares about. He genuinely cares about the kid. He'll tell you that. I sat in his office with kids, with Heaven Brown Schuler, with Peyton Strickland, who I brought down here from Boston or Massachusetts area. I've heard the pitches. I've seen his sincerity. To a guy that was a preferred walk-on offer to my kid, Peyton Strickland, to the 5-star Heaven Brown Schuler. The message didn't change. Consistency. So I think he wins those kids over, most of them. You're going to have some that just want to leave. They want to go try something else. And sometimes it's good for them to leave because it ain't working out. So I get it. But the solid core group of guys, that high 80 percentile, 85%.
Corey fighting through a technical glitch there on the internet connection there. We'll see if he pops right back in. We'll pop him out real quick and see if we can get get him right back in there. But as he was, there he is.
Yep.
Pop right back in there. As you're talking about that, Corey, you're talking about the high 5 stars. I think that's where we lost you, the difference. And I heard that as well the other day, that Shane Beamer goes out of his way to make sure that everybody in the building, the program, is going to be treated similarly, no matter what kind of stars they come in with, or what kind of background they have necessarily. That he's trying to treat them like an equal member of the team, and it makes sense, man. If you're going to sell the atmosphere of love and family and the whole thing, that's exactly what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, just being genuine. I mean, you said it. I mean, you're right that these kids know better than anybody now. I mean, they see right through the fake stuff. I mean, matter of fact, Zach Pickens was talking last night. That's one thing he talked about, that how these coaches, when he did his little announcement thing, and guy just bolted and, and left, and, had nothing else to say to him. And so he saw the reality of what this business is all about. Now, yes, that's a business, because it is a business, big business. But when you can listen, you heard me talk about Jim Washburn. You heard me talk about Joe Morrison, Brad Loing. Coaches have the ability to make such an impact. Rich Bisaccia, guys that I can go back through the years and say, man, I still got relationship with these dudes. 30 plus years, um, how they impacted my life, uh, because they were real and genuine. You know, Shane Beamer, these guys, and even the DJ Swearingers and the Stephon Gilmore guys who were here when he was with Spurrier, speak so highly of him, and he was just a special teams coach or whatever. But he made an impact. To hear guys from Oklahoma that he's everywhere he's gone, he's made impact, and so there's lasting, lifelong relationships. They're not just a temporal, with these coaches. It's lasting, and so I think when you're able to build that with these kids and the families, you don't have to worry so much about them, popping and leaving, because you're gonna have the couple, but as I said, the large percentage is going to stay because of the relationship and because of the school too. I mean, you know, I came to the University of South Carolina because I loved the school. I loved 2001. I loved what it represented. And I told my son, I was like, it wasn't a 4 or 5 year commitment. It was a 40 or 50-year commitment. I'm still here. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere, even Pageland. I'm from Columbia. That's what I say. I stayed and lived where I went to college, and that's what normally happens with a lot of these athletes. Like you make a decision to go to school somewhere, that's probably where you're going to end up. There's going to be opportunities. I got an opportunity to be in TV and radio and all these exciting things because this is where I played. The familiarity of the fan base and loving what I did. I'll be the first one to tell you I didn't deserve a job uh, as a sports director at a TV station. I mean, I didn't go to school for broadcasting. Now, I've done a lot of broadcasting in New York, but in the booth and studio, things like that. But because of South Carolina, because of connection, because of what I did here, that opportunity came. And I try to maximize that. But it wasn't because of my pedigree of being in sports. I mean, it's because I went to South Carolina and I was a Gamecock. So all this stuff means a lot. So you can't keep bouncing around to school. You're not building any foundation. I mean, you should be able to say, hey, I'm going to school X and I'm 40, 50-year commitment. This is where I want to be. And if kids can think like that, I think things will be a little different.
Man, I don't know if you've ever crystallized it like that or it's ever been crystallized for me. As you were speaking, you were talking about the relationship between player and coach. And it popped up in my head, like, I think Will Muschamp was actually really good at that. Every guy who's ever played for him, I feel like they really liked him on that level. But then you went to the next level and talked about the importance of the school and that relationship. And that's where Muschamp missed at South Carolina, isn't it?
Yeah, Champ was, and I like Will Muschamp.
Well, I feel like this is how every conversation that anybody who's ever known him starts. That's what I'm saying. It's that personal thing. He's got that.
Yeah, he's got that. I mean, because I go back, my son committed to Florida. I mean, in the beginning, Will Muschamp, right? So I've known Champ before he got to South Carolina. And he's a heck of a person. But the whole school thing was missed. I mean, his problem was not, Will was kind of wanting to be like Saban. Like Saban can be standoffish and not deal with all the, hugging the baby type things, kissing the mamas. Saban could do that because Saban won championships, right?
Same as Spurrier, right?
Right. Spurrier could do that. He came with a pedigree with a championship, with numerous SEC championships. So he didn't have to play that game. And Will Muschamp missed the boat because had he had the Shane Beamer attitude, right? Won over the fan base on Twitter, talks to the media, makes you feel like your job, Tim Hill, is important. You're very respected by him, like Shane Beamer does. He has interaction with every media person. I mean, on Twitter, he'll call you back. Well, Champ wasn't going to do that. Champ going to make you feel like you're not important. If you're not in this room right here, then I can't deal with you. And that was a mistake because you're not winning at a clip that you can do that. If he was winning SEC championship, nobody cares. Treat me like crap. Don't talk to me. I don't have to talk to the media. If you got the rings, you got no rings, not from South Carolina. So when you start to fall, guess what the people are going to do? Media, writers, I mean, fan base, they gonna do everything they can to get you up out of here. And I think that's where he went wrong. The players love him. The Debo Samuels, the big boy, other kids is the first round pick. You
Hayden
know,
Hurst.
yeah, all these guys. I mean, he recruited them. He brought in great players. I mean, go look at who's in the NFL. Those are his guys. I mean, that his attitude with the fan base and not being able to transition there like a Shane Beamer, and of course the offensive coordinator was always a problem. You know, so those two things got him out of here, and I think it hurt him. Same thing at Florida, and he didn't change because I knew. You know, with Alabama, and then I looked what he was doing. It was the same thing. When I looked at the program, the strength program, everything internally, it was Alabama. It was like, how can I make South Carolina Alabama? You can't. It's like that's a whole different. You can't do that. You know, make it unique in your own way. And he wasn't able to adjust. But that said and done, I liked him. I really did. And I'd actually had conversations with him. He done many things for me when I asked him in the media, you know, one-on-one stuff, or I knew what was going on. I can call him. He'll tell me things I didn't say in the media because I was telling somebody this last night. I was always an athlete and a coach type player versus a media guy. So I always lean that way just because that's who I am.
Sure.
And so, but he was cool that way, but he wasn't cool with everybody that way. And I think that was a problem.
Well, I don't bring it up to drag anybody's name
Right.
through the mud at all. I just brought it up more to try to point out the positive there of that Muschamp and the foundational relationships that I think he had with nearly every single one of his guys. But you got to be more than that as a head coach, especially. And the dichotomy there between he and Shane Beamer, it seems to be pretty stark and a big contrast, and certainly something that I think Gamecock fans appreciate. And maybe it's the timing of it all as well, and just the difference for sure. I wanted to get a couple comments in here. Craig says, he weighs in. Congrats, Pastor, on the Hall of Fame nomination. Been a big fan for a long time. Says, well deserved. York says, hey, Tim and Corey. Corey's one of my favorite players, both born October 26th, 6 years older on my part. Nice work. Or
Yes,
25th,
sir.
I should say. October 25th. I'll have to put that down on the calendar. Send you congrats next time, Corey.
Thank you, guys.
You mentioned that offensive coordinator thing. And if we can keep you a couple more minutes, I'm
Yeah.
really interested in your thoughts about the current Carolina offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, and what was going on last year and what you think might happen now with Spencer Rattler running the offense this year.
Last year, I was kind of baffled, as I'm sure you were, and a lot of other fans, like, what in the world are we doing? Right? Because I've seen them work, I've seen practice, and I knew South Carolina had athletes, right? I go out to practice, and you can identify, man, they got some speed here, they got some elusive guys over here, some young guys that can run. You know, I didn't understand the Zeb Nolan move. I mean, I got it. That was a desperation type move to bring him from out of the booth, so to speak, on the field. But I've always been a DeCarrion Joyner fan. I've said it the whole time I was on Watch Fox and on the radio. DeCarrion Joyner needed an innovator, right? He needed a coach that had a sharp pencil, as I like to say. A guy that can draw up ball plays, Steve Spurrier used to say. A guy that can take his skill set with these other speed guys, Jaheim Bells of the world, and all these other folks, and say, listen, we're going to do this. I know this is what I want to do as an offense coordinator, but I don't have the players and I don't have this type of quarterback to run my system. So I got to be innovative and draw up some things that work for this guy. Well, that's what kind of made me a little bit mad, I'll be honest with you, because I'm like, what I saw in the Duke's Mayo Bowl was what I envisioned them doing the whole season. When Luke Doty went down, because him and DK kind of, the same kind of player. Why did you wait to the last game to make that adjustment? And that's why I kept saying, why? When you had these guys out here, I mean, utilize in space. I talked about when I played, it was a box game. The game was played in the box. 7-man, 9-on-7 was famous, right? Now the game is 7-on-7, basically. Let's get you out. Well, you got speed. You got a quarterback that's got a lively arm. You got a quarterback that's elusive, can extend plays. Why wouldn't you draw up these things months ago? So I don't know what they're going to do now. Now here comes Spencer Rattler, a guy that is a gunslinger, a guy that um, runs well too. What are you going to do with him? How are you going to utilize him? How are you going to put together these other pieces to go with him? And so I'm very interested to see what that's going to look like. And I didn't take too much from the spring, Tim, from it because I'm like, that's just a limited piece of the pie. They only do so much. You got so much going, just the fundamental things of the game versus the X's and O's. But I want to see this summer what is that going to look like with Spencer Rattler. The guy can play. We know he can play. I know he got benched to Caleb Jones, I believe, of Oklahoma last year for whatever reason. But the guy was in the conversation of being a Heisman. He was a front runner going into the season last year. So he can play. Josh Van, who's going to be the other receiver, step up, what the running game's going to look like. I think they go more spread you out. I think you see more of what we saw in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I think that's what's going to make South Carolina successful. I don't think they have the offensive line to even hold up, that long in pass protection. So you get your quarterback on the flanks. I did see that in the spring. They rolled him out a lot. They moved him around a little bit, and he can do that. He can throw it down the field on the run. So I think we see an offense that's starting to get a little bit more innovative and not become so predictable. How many games last year that you watched, you said, man, I know exactly what they're going to do. And they run bad play after bad play. And you go, why? This play was dead. And why are you running the same thing again? And I sat there many times watching as a coach. I'm like, what is going on? If I'm the defensive coordinator on the other side, this is easy. What they're doing offensively was easy for me to just, man, I'm going to just let the dogs go because they're not doing anything different. But the Mayo Bowl, Duke's Mayo Bowl, this is what I think the offense needs to look like because you got players. So how are you going to use Dakeon Joyner? Is he just going to go back to being a wide receiver, which he's not? He's not a wide receiver. I mean, I know they try to move him over there, but he's not polished. He don't run. I mean, just being honest, I love him, but I'm just being honest here. He's not a wide receiver. I think you got to have a package for him. I think you got to let him keep playing quarterback because I think he sets up well for what you can do with the skill set. So if Satterfield doesn't change and become more consistent to what we saw in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium last December, whenever it was, then that's a problem in my book. I mean, you got to be innovative. Today, especially, you have to be innovative as an offensive coordinator. And if you're not smart, and I always said this, dumb coaches don't change. I mean, and it's insanity because they keep repeating the same mess over and over. And I'm like, why would you say, hey, this is what I want to run. This works. You got to be able to do it. And if they can't do it, that's insanity. Smart coaches say, you know what? I love to be this type of offense, but I don't have Johnny here and I don't have Pete over here. So, but this is what I do have. So let me improvise. Let me change. Let me get the ball in the playmaker's hands. Let me be innovative. Let me sometimes draw them up on the dirt during the game. I might have to change. Those are smart coaches who win. And so hopefully he'll be that guy that says, I'm going to scrap whatever I thought and I'm going to change to what fits my personnel.
Well, that last part about the personnel is huge, especially when you're trying to run a more of a pro kind of offense in college football. You got to have a bunch of pros, right? I mean,
ding, ding.
I think LSU is the greatest example, right? Pre Joe Burrow, we are all scratching our head like, how does LSU not move the football better with all these all the talent coming through there? Then the 1 year with Joe Brady, fantastic, right? Joe Brady goes to Carolina Panthers, going to rewrite the record books in the NFL, fired pretty quickly. A brilliant guy with players, right? Not so brilliant without the players. And I think that what you mentioned too in the bowl game, looks like South Carolina's coaching staff was brilliant in the bowl game. Yeah. And a lot of times during the regular season, the opposite way. That's part of the. I just wanted to make sure we were kind of on the same page with that. I know you see the game of football much different. I wondered about the defensive side of the ball. Let's flip it. Clayton White, I thought, was the exact opposite of what we saw from Marcus Satterfield in his first year as a coordinator. Consistent and consistently good.
Yeah.
for the most part. What did you take away seeing the defensive side of the ball much more technically, I think, than a lot of us?
Yeah, I really like him. I like him a lot, man. I spent some time with him this weekend, and um, just a very, very smart coach. Again, he is that guy that says, you know what, these are the guys I got. This is what I'm gonna do. South Carolina one of the top pass defenses in the country last year. Um, I think they got to get better up front. I thought linebacker was a problem for them last year because they gave up too much in the run game. I thought if we had any kind of dudes in the middle last year, we could have beat Clemson. I really do. Clemson was ripe for the picking last year, but we couldn't stop the run. They couldn't throw it. They couldn't do anything down the field, but we lost that game because our inability to stop the run. But we got D linemen. You had guys up front that can ball. I mean, but our problem last year was the two inside backers, and they were small, undersized, and couldn't get off blocks. And sometimes, as a coach, you got to try to sacrifice that by implementing run blitzes. Yes, that we do have run blitzes, and that means I got to get guys going downhill because they're too small. If that guard gets up on them, or that tackle comes up to the second level, they're not able to shed blocks and get off and make plays. So run blitzes mean I got to try to get them in the gaps. And a lot of times, when he called those types of run blitzes or dogs, when he's looping around and stunting on the defensive line, they got gashed a little bit. So, but I love what he's doing defensively. The pass defense was outstanding. Cam Smith, everybody thinks he's going to be a first-round pick next year. Safeties was solid, and I think they'll be better at linebacker this year. If they can find a way to stop the run, man, I mean, they're going to be a solid top 20 defense, and that's what you want. That's good enough to win. And so, Clayton is a dude, man. He's going to bring pressure. He knows when to dial up pressure, when to back off, play a little zone. I think he's smart. Jimmy Lindsey, the D-line coach, who's from the country like me, down in the Chesterfield County parts, and he does a great job developing the defensive line. I think it's going to be a big year for Jordan Birch. This is his come-out party. Zach Pickens decided to stay and come back to work on his game. I mean, so they got players. You got the dude that's from Georgia State, the pass rusher, long, twitchy guy on the outside. I mean, they got pieces. They got enough talent, but they got to be able to stop the run. That was, if you go back and look at the stats, you go look at running yards. It was not pretty. So they got to get better, and I thought it was more not the D linemen. I thought it was more about the inside backers who just weren't big enough and not strong enough.
Well, I'm glad you're here to respond to this instead of just me. Until we get, Craig says, 2 or 3 6'5", 325 to 335-pound guys, it'll be tough to stop the run. Are you of that mindset? I feel like fans across the board just look at the roster last year, see that the opposing offensive line outweigh the Gamecock defensive line significantly, and say, oh, this is a big-time disadvantage. Why is it like that?
Well, if you go back and look at the team that won a national championship this year, Georgia, and you look at the defensive line, especially on the interior, which is what the Texans are saying here. Yes, because when you got a nose tackle, I like this old school nose tackle, nose guard, you got to have a guy that can muddy up the water, man. You got to have a guy that can take two blocks. Jordan Davis, I believe is his name for Georgia, he ate up blocks, right? And that gave those linebackers, Tyndall and those guys, the ability to run downhill. I mean, and I play that position a lot, inside backer. When you are freed up to just, man, dissect and run downhill untouched, I mean, it's what made Ray Lewis great, right? Having Tony Siragusa in the middle sucking up blocks. Ray Lewis was, because he was attacked. He was an assault missile. So South Carolina has to find somebody like that. And they're out there. And that's one of my kids, Heaven Brown Schuler, is that kind of guy. Heaven Brown Schuler is 6'5" and 313 pounds right now and a rising junior. I mean, he's a grown man. So that's why they're recruiting guys like that, because and he's got good enough footwork and things like that. He can make plays in the backfield. So yes, to the texture, they do need to they got the end play. I mean, and Pickens is kind of a hybrid, right? Pickens is kind of a end. He reminds me of a 3-4 type of defensive end that plays what we call a 5 technique, outside shade on the tackle. He's not an interior guy. He might can slide down and play interior, what we call sub package, which is nickel and dime. Then he fits well in there. But when you're talking about a base defense, you got to have them all in there. And you're right. You got to find the Heaven Brown Schuler. You look him up, watch his huddle. You're talking about a big dude that can just suck up blocks, and he can be able to do that for the Gamecocks if he can. Hopefully they can sign him. He's from South Carolina originally. Matter of fact, my boy's mother, Lisa, taught him at private school, Chesterbrook Academy here in Northeast Columbia. So I'm to go way back with this kid. His mom's from here, and they moved to Atlanta. So South Carolina game, you gotta hope you get a guy like Heaven Brown Schuler, because he's what they're just texting about, 325 and strong.
Man, appreciate all the information today and your story for sure. Wanted to get you out with expectations for Gamecock football year 2 for Shane Beamer. What's a fair expectations after 7-6 in year number 1, and what will you be looking for to see signs of progress in the program outside of obviously more wins?
I think, Tim, this is going to be a hard year, and I said because he exceeded many people's expectations, right? Last year, most people had 3 to 4 wins. I think I said, when someone asked me on the radio and show, I said, I'll give them 5. They won 6 and then beat North Carolina in the May. 7 wins is great based on what they done the year before. I don't know what I expect. I just expect it to be equally or better. I think South Carolina can still win 7 games and be a better football team. And if that makes sense, I just think that this conference is so hard. I look at just the SEC East, right? Look at what Tennessee's doing. Look at what Kentucky has been doing. Look at Florida now with a new coach, and Billy Napier, who we all know very well. Know that he has a great innovative offensive play call. They got talent on that roster down there. So Florida's going to be better. Missouri always is that surprise team, and then South Carolina is doing better in what they're building. The SEC East, man, is going to be hard in itself. And then you look at, you got to play A&M. Well, they just only got the best recruiting class ever, if you go by believe what they say on paper. And I think they play Arkansas, right? It's the other West game. Then you got Clemson, who knows what they're going to be. With the offensive Clemson be better. So when you look at that schedule, it's one of the toughest in the country. So I expect them to definitely be in games. I think defensively they're going to be very good. And I think they got some good players there. I'm just really waiting to see what the Spencer Rattler era is going to look like, because if they can protect him, if some other people step up, we like what Jaheim Bell is doing. He's got to get healthy. A lot of soft tissue stuff he's been dealing with because he's so fast. Get him healthy. I think you can flex him out with a Josh Van, who's solid. We need another wide receiver. Definitely, they got somebody in the portal to step up. So I think this team has the potential to be an 8-win. I think if they get 8 in the regular season, 8-4 in year 2, with the potential of winning 9 in a bowl game, maybe you go to the Outback or Gator Bowl and win a 9th win. Tremendous. You want to see the trajectory this way, but could it go the opposite way and see South Carolina be still a better? Yeah, I do think that. So I think year 2 is going to be very intriguing, and I'm praying that they get the 8 wins, because I know our fan bases are they're fragile, right? And it's like Spencer Rattler, you got their hope. And Spencer, they trust. And it's like, we got a quarterback, we got a Heisman guy, and we should be winning 10 games. Well, it's not that easy. So I do think they're going to be better. So I think they'll be better than what they did last year, just because I think they got better players. They definitely have a trigger man now. You can't win without a trigger man. And they got some other good pieces. So I'm looking forward to see, better than what they did. I don't want to put a number, but I think they'll be better than they were last year for sure.
Man, good stuff all the way around, Corey. Is Ava still there? Did she sit through all this?
No, Ava. Well,
she's working in the yard too? You got her working in the yard too, don't you?
Yeah, I got to, you got to start them early, Tim. Put the rake in the hand and, little play lawnmower that they'll love. Cutting grass is fun, right?
Absolutely. My 2-year-old's got the leaf blower that blows bubbles instead of
there
we go.
You got to trick the mind, man. You got to get the mind like, this is when they get older, and you say, hey, cut the yard. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's cool.
It's
You gonna
so
actually
fun.
give me $20 to do it?" Yes, $20.
Hey, man, appreciate you hopping on today, and congratulations again on being in the USC Hall of Fame. Certainly well deserved, and everything you've done around
Yeah.
Gamecock football, being connected to it for all these years after the NFL career, and sharing your story today, and helping youth players especially with your experiences. I think it's really important stuff, and a great message out there.
Well, I really do, Tim. Good to hear from your voice again on the air, and of course you've been doing this thing a long time. I used to listen to you and Matt, way, way, way years ago. It seemed like 20 years ago. However, and working with Matt too over at LTX. I mean, we've been around this thing, man, and so good to see you and hear your voice, and wish you well, and the Lord be with you. And I know this will take you've always been great at what you do, so I know great success is coming for you. And again, thanks for having me. God bless Gamecock Nation. And again, I'm humbled and so, so thankful to the folks, and especially Anton Gunn. Let me just shout him out real quick, who's on the board. And he submitted my name. I was his choice. And he was like, it's been way too long. And so he told me that it was a unanimous vote for me to get in the Hall of Fame. And I'm honored to be there with George Compton, who I've known for years, and Lord bless Dale Wilkes, who lost his life last year, passed away. So I'm just honored to be in that class. So I thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Hope we can do it again
Anytime,
sometime
brother.
relatively soon. All right, sounds good. Corey Miller, man, great having him on, and great catching up with him for sure. Just a tremendous story in so many ways.